I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I was working on some of my own jewelry inspired by some color and warm weather here in Maryland. And I figured I would just record it since I was sitting here making my own. I figured I'd show you guys kind of what I was doing and give you a little bit of an idea. I've done some other little simple wire working videos like this in the past, but while I'm making, I figure I would record and join you guys in. So what I'm going to be doing today, I'm calling this the Bazaar Necklace. It reminds me of kind of going into a market or a bazaar and seeing just tons of array of color of different things going on. On the left-hand side, if you do want to follow along and make one of the necklaces for the bazaar bracelet or necklace, whatever you're choosing may be, on the left-hand side here, we'll do a little drop-down menu with links to those different products to purchase from me online. If you don't see the little drop downs underneath the video, there's always a description of what the video is about. In that description, there's usually a little down arrow that says show more, and you can show more of the description, which will give you links to the different products as well. You may already have all of these products too, so that's kind of the nice thing when I'm designing just for myself and using some stock. You may already have some of these. So again, I was really inspired by the warm temperatures here in February, and I decided to go bright and bold and make a nice 16-inch chain link necklace. For this necklace, I am using the 2-hole lentils. The cool thing about this design is you can also pick up other 2-hole beads in similar shape, like this is the 2-hole bar, or you could use a brick as well. And it's going to show the flat side of them basically as you link them together. So if you have any 2-hole flatter beads like this, you can join those in as well and kind of vary your project and the actual shape that you're doing. In addition to my lentils, I also have some 6/0 seed beads, just a random mix from the rainbow mix of 6/0s that I kind of have a half tube of. For the colors, if you like the color selection, I'm using the opaque red lentil. I'm using the sunflower yellow lentil. I have the chartreuse lentil, the lentil in turquoise, and then the lentil in the metallic amethyst luster. So with all of those kind of lentils, I decided to bring out 6/0s and really play on color and match everything up. So again, the 6/0s are just a tube of the rainbow mix of 6/0s. You may have some random half tubes of 6/0s at home. It's a great way to use those up. This can also be done with the 2-hole triangles as well. You could do it also with some trinities or some emmas. You'd have an extra hole, but you could get kind of a fun design going from 2 to 1 in those. Maybe I'll do a video on that as well. So again, if you have any of the other 2-hole beads, you can try those in also. To build the whole necklace, I'm using some 22 gauge artistic wire, and this is the anti-tarnish brass color. Any wire really will work for this. If you want a daintier look, you can go down to 24 gauge wire, but I would suggest using the 22 gauge. If you try to squeeze 20 gauge into the lentil holes, it prevents them from being able to kind of move around that link. So 22 is kind of the great size to go along with this. And again, if you have gunmetal wire or you have silver wire, play around. This is kind of a fun, like I said, bazaar necklace, just to throw all the colors together. To do this wire working project, again, I'm going to be making about 16 inches, so it hangs down a little bit lower than a choker on me. If you want to make it a little bit longer, you may need a little bit more. You'll get about 3 necklaces out of one of these spools of the 22 gauge wire if you are doing a 16-inch necklace. I have 3 tools then that are handy. I have my round nose pliers, and those are going to be used to make the round loops on my links. I have my wire cutters, which the wire cutters have 2 sides. They have a V side, I call it, and then the flat side. The flat side we're always going to use to cut closest to whatever our project is, with that V side kind of facing up. And then I have a bent needle nose pliers, and I prefer the Sparkle tool set. That's kind of my go-to bead-along tool set. I love it, and it really doesn't need sharpened that much. A lot of times whenever you're getting tools for wire working, whatever money you put into them is usually what you're going to get out of them. So I find that they're priced really accordingly. So if you want a higher end tool, go ahead and get the higher end tool. They'll last a little bit longer. If you don't mind replacing your tools, go ahead and get the $6 tool as well. You also want a nice workable surface, because what you're going to end up with as you're working is lots of tiny little pieces of your wire left over. So you want a bead mat or a beading surface that'll grip onto that so it doesn't go flying across the room and kind of end up in your carpet and all of that. To get started with this Bazaar necklace, we are going to be using our 22 gauge, and we're going to have our pliers right near us because you're going to be using those interchangeably. So go ahead if you do want to work along and dump out any of your 2-hold beads here and your little pile of seed beads, and we're going to get ready by cutting a piece of our 22 gauge wire. So when I work with my wire, I generally will pull off about 10 inches to 12 inches of wire, just work straight through it, and that'll give me usually about 4 or 5 links when I'm working on this size in particular. And I should have mentioned before, the lentils are 6 millimeter, and then the seed beads, again, they're in a 6.0, but you can change it up. You can use 11.0 seed beads in the middle if you want it smaller, or you can use rounds in the middle and kind of change up the design. I am going to be just cutting a smaller piece of wire so that way I can stay in frame for you. Wire working videos are very hard to do because of the different kind of hand movements and how far they're going, and I'm working in about a business card size area for you guys to get it nice and close. So I'm going to just do a smaller piece of wire, but usually I do pull off a good 10 inches or so of my wire. Once I have my wire cut and kind of set the cutters down to the side, I'm going to act as if I'm starting the necklace from scratch. And I'll show you guys how to make your own clasp as well. That way you don't need a clasp on hand. I actually don't have a gold clasp that would work here at home, so I'll be just making one out of wire and showing you guys how to do that. To get started, you want to pick your round nose pliers and pick a point on those pliers. If you're somebody that really loves consistency and having it nice and even, you can even take a Sharpie marker and just make a mark on your round nose pliers so you know exactly where to make the loop and what size to make the loop with each and every turn. I'm going to be kind of eyeballing it because that's how I like to roll, and making my loops. When I make the loops, I don't want to make them really tiny because I want them to be able to move along the lentil. If you make them too tiny, that lentil's not going to move, and when you're wearing your piece, it might get stuck overlapping and not kind of have the opportunity to really fold out. So I want to make sure that I'm making those loops a decent size. So I'm going to hold my wire with my round nose pliers, and you can see I'm just kind of straightening out a little bit. And I want you to imagine, I'm going to be holding this kind of down flat so you guys can see it, but I want you to imagine that these pliers are exactly at your eye level, and this wire is sticking straight up, and this wire is sticking straight down. I'm leaving myself about 3/4 of an inch of wire above the pliers, and then I have my remaining wire below the pliers. Holding the wire below the pliers, I'm going to bend the pliers away from me 90 degrees. So this is the exact angle that you'll see when you're looking and working with it. What that's going to do is create that 90-degree angle that I'm going to use to make my loop. While I have that in that same position before moving my pliers and moving my hands are basically turned to the side right now, I'm going to take that short piece of wire and bring it over the top of the round nose pliers. It's then going to hit the wire on the opposite side. Keep yours on your pliers. I'm going to take mine off just so you can see what it looks like at this point. At this point, it's going to look almost like a little bobby pin. What we want to do is actually complete the loop by taking that short piece of wire and crossing it over the long piece of wire. To do so, when the wires are touching, and again, this is right at eye level, you're going to switch your hands, and I'm going to focus more on my hands right now. You're going to switch your hands by rotating them and switch then, in essence, from the top jaw to the bottom jaw of the pliers. So I'll do that one more time. I have my hands here so that you can see the opening of the hands. I'm going to completely rotate my wrist, and that moves the wire again from the top jaw to the bottom jaw of the pliers. And I'm still holding this all at eye level. The short piece of wire then is going to go to the left and up to 90 degrees, so you won't be able to see it basically behind that round nose pliers. If I pull it off and turn it to the side, you'll see that loop there is coming kind of right out above the wire. That is called an eye pin. Because I took it on and off so much, I have that kind of little kink in it. But ideally, when you're doing it, and when you're doing it in kind of that series of swift motions, you'll have it nice and straight. That if you would take a marker and draw a line from the base line here, that extra long piece of wire, right through the top of the eye pin, it would be nice and in the center. This loop too is about the size that I want in order to do my lentil. If you're not exactly sure what size to make your loop, make a couple practice loops and then you can mark your pliers. To mark the pliers, just put it back on your loop, back on the pliers, and take your Sharpie and mark right along. If you want to get the Sharpie off, an alcohol pad will pull the Sharpie off the marker. Once I have my loop, it's time to add my lentil. So I'll just pick up one of the lentils here. I'm going to put the lentil onto that short piece of wire, separate it out a little bit from the base wire, and just kind of pop that right in on that loop. It's just going to hang out right there in the middle. You can see it opens up that loop just the tiniest of little bits, so that way you can get that lentil in there. With my round nose pliers then, I'm going to hold right above the crossover in the little head. I say basically you're holding from the nose down if this was somebody's head. And what we're going to do is they're going to take their scarf and we're going to wrap it around their neck. When I wrap this or coil this small piece to make a coiled eye pin, I want the coils to be nice and tight against one another, as well as nice and tight against the wire which I'm coiling. If they sit off a little bit, you can kind of cheat and pull it together with your pliers. Once you have 2 to 3 coils, you can go in with your cutters with that flat side facing down and cut off the extra little bit of wire. That's going to make a nice kind of flush end at the point here where the wires come together. After I do a couple connections, I'll then go in with my needle nose pliers and kind of pinch down on that end. I find that it's much easier to pinch down on that end and to make sure that it's not sharp once you have a long piece of connection. So starting out, then you have your one lentil on. You're going to pick up one of your seed beads and put that on your wire. You could also use, like I said, any sort of bead that you want in here. If you don't want a bead in there, the 2 coils will just meet in the center. But I think the look of adding variety and kind of a different shape in there looks nice. To do the loop on the other side, we're basically repeating the steps that we did previously. However, this time, instead of the long piece of wire being below us, we are going to have a longer piece of wire above. So this is going to be sticking straight up in the air. And then instead of a piece of wire down below, we're going to have the bead hanging there. I want my links to face in the same direction. So I'm going to throw that wire and make sure that it's off to the side and that I can't really see that loop itself because it's going to be right there parallel to the loop that I'll be making. I'm going to leave enough space that I can do my 2 coils right above my bead, but I'm not going to leave too much space that there's going to be a lot of gap. I leave about 1/8 of an inch above the bead, hold the bead just like I did the wire, and bend my other piece of wire to the back. Again, once I have that bent to the back, the piece of wire is going to come over the top of the round nose pliers till it hits the bead on the other side. This point here is when I switch the way that I'm holding my pliers, and that's going to, in essence, take it from that top jaw of the round nose pliers to the bottom jaw of the round nose pliers. If that is getting you a little bit confused, you can simply slide it off and then slide it on the round nose pliers going from the top to the bottom. But if you get the hang of just turning your wrist, it's much easier. I'm then going to take the extra wire and push it to the back left-hand side. If you're a lefty, you're basically doing everything opposite and to the right. You'll push that wire. So I have my nice big loop sitting here, and I'm ready to grab my next lentil. So I'll go ahead in here and grab in one of my purple lentils. And I'm gonna just stick that on the end of the scarf, basically. Kind of push that scarf out of the way a little bit from the neck and drop the lentil in there. If you need to, you can move the wire. It's nice and flexible to make that loop nice and circular if it did get thrown off in shape. Again, holding from the person's nose down, I'm going to take that extra wire and coil it around its base. Once you have it coiled, you're going to take the extra and trim it off. And you can see this is a pretty large piece here that I just pulled off. That's why I like to work with a bigger piece of wire because you have less scrap that you work with. When you get further in the project, again, what you're going to do is go ahead in and just kind of squeeze all those little wire ends with your needle nose pliers down so they're not poking against your neck or against sweaters or anything. There I have my first link. To create the second link, I'll pull a little bit more wire off. Normally you'll have a piece of wire already in your hand. Although if you are a beginner, it's easier to work with a smaller piece of wire. It's not kind of hitting you as you're trying to work with it. So I'm going to make my loop, and this time I'm going to do it in one fluid motion so you can see. Holding the wire below, push the pliers back 90 degrees. Bring the wire over the top of the round nose pliers till it touches. Switch from the top jaw to the bottom jaw and take the wire back 90 degrees. I'm then going to take that and we're going to do basically a rosary chain version of the bracelet where we're just linking and linking and linking and link on to the loop here. From there, grab with your round nose pliers and coil that scarf around the neck. Once you have it coiled, go ahead in and chop off the extra little piece. Pick a seed bead color, and I think I'll go with blue, and put that onto your wire. We're going to make the loop on the other side, and again we're going to make sure that our loop, as we're making it, now we have a longer piece of beading below it. We're going to make it by holding on to the longer piece and making sure that those links are facing, the loops are going to be in the same direction. Once I have my loop made, I'm going to go ahead and add my next lentil. If you want to and you already have another chain made that you forgot to kind of add into that, all you'll do is actually link on to the pieces that you've already created. So this way I get to add on to my necklace that I already have created, continue on just like I need to. And at this point then I can add to either end of the necklace by coiling. I'm going to go ahead and take that flat side of my pliers and trim off that extra wire. Again, those little kind of edges that are sticking up, I'll go back into the project, find where the last place that I tucked in is, and it looks like the blue, because I can see the purple sticking out a little bit. I'm going to go back in and just pinch those down. This can be the most difficult part for people. What I say is you don't want to think about the fact that you're kind of guiding that little piece of wire into place. You're physically going in and you're going right above it and kind of pinching it down. And I'll just go right along the necklace and pinch down those little ends, because you don't want any little sharp ends. If you have a lot of trouble pinching those down, chances are you may be able to go in still and cut a little bit more of that wire off. And there, then you have that nice collection of all of your links going on. So I'm going to add a couple more links into my necklace here. Then I'm excited to wear it on this nice spring-like day in winter. And I'm going to add a couple more links onto this design here to make it a little bit longer. I have about 12 or 13 inches now, so I'm going to add about 4 more inches onto the design, and then I'll come back and show you guys how to make the clasp. So I'm here at the end of my necklace on the first side, and what I'm doing is, instead of grabbing onto a next lentil, what I'm going to show you is just that at this end here, I'm going to make a loop. This loop is going to be what my hook and eye basically attach to. So I'm going to make a little hook on the other side, or a little fish hook, and then that will attach into the loop here on this side. On this side, it doesn't really matter whether or not the loops match up, but if you want to stay consistent, go ahead and match up your loops. I have my bead in there, and again, I'm going to make my loop. This time I went the whole way back on my round nose pliers, which is a little bit further than I have been going, and that's going to make the loop just a little bit bigger. From there, instead of adding a lentil on, I'm going right in, and you can see my extra big piece of wire here. And because it's difficult to hold that loop without a bead in it to kind of keep its shape, you can go in with your bent flat nose pliers too if you want, and hold on to your loop and make your extra little eye pin there. Chopping off the extra wire, then I'll go back for the last couple links that I did and actually pinch down on those ends, flattening them out so that way they do not pinch on to close or anything. After I go through and just kind of pinch down these edges, which I try to do every 4 inches or so, just because it's that tedious task that you don't want to have to do at the very end. You just kind of want to wear your necklace. So if you work on it as you go, you don't have to do it at the very end. On the other side here of the lentil, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make a loop that I'm then going to take that loop and attach to my lentil. I want to make sure that I have at least 2.5 inches on the other end of the wire. I'm going to make my loop there and do my coiling. Once I have my coiling done, go ahead in and chop that down a little bit. Pick my next color, and if your link kind of gets messed up a little bit, you can always go in with your pliers and kind of correct that loop. And I'll go ahead in and pick a, let's pick a turquoisey colored link. All right, and now what I'm going to do on this side is actually make the clasp for the other end. To do so, I'm going to take the wire and almost in half, a little bit less than half, and I'm going to take my round nose plier at the very, very end of that wire, or very, very end of the pliers, and simply bend the wire over top of itself. You want about 1/4 inch after the end of the wire in order to coil that ending together. Because what I'm going to do then is hold those ends together, grab my needle nose, or my bent needle nose here, and kind of just gently, so it doesn't fold over on itself, squeeze down the end of that wire so that way it is kind of right next to one another. And there you have it. From there, I'm going to hold right where the wire comes together, right before the bead. Take the extra wire that's here and simply coil it around right above the bead. So you can see there. If you have any extra little bit, usually you can kind of go in with your pliers and kind of pinch that down as well, rather than cutting that little bit off. If you want to, though, you can go in with your wire cutters and just cut that little bit off. Again, I'm going to go in with my pliers one more time and just pinch down on that end to bring those ends nice and close together. It'll look a little bit like the eye of a needle and still maintain a little bit of a gap, but you want to kind of eliminate that gap as much as you can. With your hands then, you're going to hold your bead and hold that loop, and I'm going to bend the wire back about 45 degrees. In the middle of that long piece of wire, with your round nose pliers, again towards the end of them, I'm going to hold the wire and bend the top down towards the bead. With the very end of the pliers then as well, I'm going to take the very end of the wire, right where that loop is, and just bend it up ever so slightly to make a nice little hook end on there. You can take your hands then and kind of pinch it down a little bit, but that is all that is involved to do a nice handmade 22 gauge link clasp. You can see it gives a nice kind of finished look at the end. You have that bead right before it, and your necklace is all complete and ready to wear. So the fun thing, the really fun thing, like I said, about this Bazaar necklace is when you're looking at it, you really can use such a big variety of beads to do this whole linking fashion. And the colors can really kind of go and make it, and you can really play around with getting the design, wearing it, and having that nice kind of array of different shapes if you want, different colors, and getting that nice kind of springtime necklace. Again, if you need any of the materials to do this Bazaar necklace, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop down we had, or underneath the video, the details or the description of the video. You can get links to the lentils and the 6OC beads and the wire there as well. But try this out. This is kind of just a little project to give you design ideas for some wire working. Like I said, I was making my necklace and decided that I wanted to record it while I was doing it so that way I could document it for you guys as I make some of my own jewelry as well. As always, if you like these YouTube videos, you can subscribe to the channel to get regular updates from us on what's going on, to get other tutorials, bead weaving and wire working, simple ideas as well. If you want to, you can also purchase from me at potomacbeads.com or your local Potomac Bead Company location. You can also check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and all of those good social media platforms and outlets. And you can also ask if you want to become more involved to become a member of our beading group on Facebook. It's a closed group, for beading and jewelry making. Ask to become a member there, and you get a great chance to interact with a wonderful community of jewelry artists and beaders that love to design, create, share inspiration, share ideas, and share help as well. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making this Bazaar wire necklace.